Welcome back to The Hard Truth Canada. Today, we're diving deep into the latest developments shaking Canada.
Back now to that breaking news just this hour. Donald Trump, a few minutes ago, threatened to add an additional 25% tariff.
What would it take for you to remove that surcharge on the electricity coming into the U.S. from Canada?
The two greatest countries in the world. Fighting like this does not make sense. But I will respond appropriately on the electricity. Stay tuned.
From escalating trade wars to leadership shakeups, there's a lot to unpack.
If you want any proof that my economic ideas are the best, the Liberals are all trying to pretend that they're copying them right before the election.
But before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the ring notification bell so you never miss an update.
Prime Minister Trudeau, my time doesn't permit me to recognize all your accomplishments.
We should be the wealthiest and most self-reliant economy in the world today, given our natural resources.
In a bold move, President Trump has announced an increase in tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%. This escalation is in response to Ontario's recent 25% tax hike on electricity imports to the United States.
Set to come into force tomorrow, March 12th morning. That would take those tariffs, as I mentioned, up to 50%. The CBC's Sarah Levitt joins me now again from Washington. You know, Sarah, that Truth Social post just came out as we were discussing. You've had a chance to read through it. So have I. And let's go through in part what it says. And he says that this is really, Sarah, in retaliation for the move that Ontario's premier took yesterday. He said, based on Ontario, Canada, adding a 25% surcharge to electricity being exported to 3 U.S. states. And he says that's why he's going to double the tariff on steel and aluminum coming from Canada to the U.S. Here is just a portion of what he put up there. Sarah, what have you learned so far digesting these words?
Well, you know, there's a lot to unpack here. And, you know, as I can do some fact checking because of prior knowledge, and in some cases I don't know. So we'll go through what I do know. This is essentially a doubling. It is a doubling of those tariffs to steel and aluminum. So going from 25% to 50% as of tomorrow, saying he's definitely going forward with this. What's unclear in all this is that we also have coming in April 2nd, which was delayed a month after having one day on, 25% on all Canadian products. Does that now mean that as of April 2nd, we're going to see 75% tariffs on steel and aluminum? That's not clear from this post, but 50% is already a massive amount. 25% was something the industries were saying is unacceptable. So can you imagine at 50%? Industries have said they've already reacted. They've already seen reaction even before this, with layoffs, with production slowdowns, with reorienting their market. So that's that one aspect that isn't entirely clear whether as of April 2nd it'll be 75%. But what we do know, tomorrow morning, 50% tariff on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States from Canada. And of course, Trump has said this is in direct response to what the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, had said, a 25% surcharge on electricity to some states. And Trump also saying in his post that he's going to declare a national emergency on electricity within the threatened area. So that's just one section of that post.
If you're talking de-escalation, at this point, what would it take for you to remove that surcharge on the electricity coming into the U.S. from Canada?
Well, doubling the tariff on aluminum, the U.S. only can manufacture 16% aluminum that they need. The balance, for the most part, comes from Quebec, over 65%. It's going to hurt your manufacturing. You need the aluminum. You need our high-grade nickel. And I want to send more high-grade nickel. You need our electricity. You need the 4.3 million barrels of oil that gets shipped down.
Sure do.
I want to make sure we build an AMCAN fortress, the two greatest countries in the world. Fighting like this does not make sense. But I will respond appropriately on the electricity. Stay tuned. And I stress, this is not the American people. Canadians know it. And if we go into a recession, it's self-made by one person. It's called President Trump's recession, which shouldn't be this way. We should be booming both countries right now. And President Trump, you like the guy, you don't like him, they understand. They're business people. And for this to be unrolling and putting the whole country and Canada into a potential recession over what? He should be focusing on China. He should not be focusing on his closest neighbor and ally. Well, China is ramping up for the last 10 years, as we've all been sleeping. They're taking over the critical mineral sector in the entire world. But there's one area that has more critical minerals than anywhere in the world. That's Ontario. And I want to make sure it goes to our closest friends and allies and protect America and Canada.
Do you think Doug Ford should take these drastic measures in response to Trump's tariffs? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
If you want any proof that my economic ideas are the best, the Liberals are all trying to pretend that they're copying them right before the election.
With Mark Carney stepping in as Canada's new, unelected Prime Minister, Opposition Leader Pierre Poilievre has been vocal about his concerns.
All the big economic questions of the last 5 years, Mark Carney has been wrong and exactly wrong, and I have been right. I said 5 years ago the money printing would cause inflation. He said deflation was on the horizon. I turned out to be right. I said the carbon tax would drive up food prices, and it did. Drove them up 37% faster in Canada than in the United States of America. I was the first parliamentarian to predict that we would have the inflation crisis, while Carney, Freeland, Trudeau, and others were saying that we would not. I was the first one to be, along with my Conservative colleagues, fighting for pipelines. Pipelines now everyone claims that they support after opposing them for the last 10 years. So if Mr. Carney is so smart on economics, how is it that he was so wrong for so long on all of the economic issues? One thing I don't have experience with is taking jobs out of Canada, moving them to the United States, selling out our resource workers to support Middle Eastern resource workers. That's not the kind of experience that I have, but that's not the kind of experience that we want. Canadians have a choice in the next election. Do they want to give the Liberals a fourth term in power after they drove up housing costs, food prices, and taxes, blocked resource projects, and made us more reliant on Trump's America? Or do they want Canada First Conservatives who will axe taxes, build homes, unleash production of our resources, and bring home paychecks, production, and sovereignty to our country?
Is Pierre Poilievre the leader Canada needs right now? Share your opinions in the comments below.
Prime Minister Trudeau, my time doesn't permit me to recognize all your accomplishments, so I'll speak at a higher level. You have combined strength and compassion every day as a fighter for Canada.
In Mark Carney's first speech as Prime Minister, Carney pledged to eliminate the carbon tax and confront Trump's aggressive tariff policies. However, his recent cabinet appointments have raised eyebrows.
You have led us through some of the hardest challenges that this nation has ever faced. And to respond, my government will put into action our plan to build a stronger economy, to create new trading relationships with reliable trading partners, and to secure our borders. So my government will immediately eliminate the divisive consumer carbon tax on families and farmers and small and medium-sized businesses. And we will stop the hike in the capital gains tax, because we think builders should be incentivized for taking risks and rewarded when they succeed. And my government will keep our tariffs on until the Americans show us respect. So Donald Trump thinks he can weaken us with his plan to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan will leave us divided and ready to be conquered. Because a person who worships at the altar of Donald Trump will kneel before him, not stand up to him. A plan that builds millions of homes. A plan that makes us an energy superpower in both clean and conventional energy. A plan that creates new trade corridors with reliable partners. A plan that creates one Canadian economy, not 13.
Carney's policy changes and appointments inspire confidence or concern. Weigh in your thoughts in the comments below.
We should be the wealthiest and most self-reliant economy in the world today, given our natural resources.
Canada stands at a crossroad facing external pressures and internal transformations. The actions of our leaders in the coming days will shape the nation's future. We want to hear from you. What are your hopes and fears during these turbulent times?
But instead, here we are. We have the fourth biggest supply of oil, yet we must import 179 million barrels of foreign oil every year because of the Liberal No New Pipelines Act, which is still law today. We are the fifth biggest supplier of natural gas, but we can't export a single cubic foot of it overseas because we don't have a single liquefaction facility. The Liberals, according to Trudeau and Carney, they don't believe there is a business case for LNG plants. We have the fewest homes per person in the G7, even as we have 10 times as much land to build on as the second biggest country, because taxes and bureaucracy block home building, leaving our youth without houses. We sell twice as much to the Americans as we sell to Canadians in other provinces because trade barriers governments impose block us from selling and buying with each other. We have the third most farmland per capita in the world, yet food prices rose 37% faster in Canada over the last 5 years than they did in the U.S. because the Carney-Trudeau carbon tax on farmers and truckers rose the price. Now, what have the Carney-Trudeau Liberals done about this? Well, they doubled the debt. They doubled housing costs. They doubled food bank lineups. They blocked Canadian energy in favor of dirty dictator oil. They raised taxes on work and investment and have driven an astonishing, eye-watering $500 billion to the United States in Canadian investment that now pays to create American jobs. All of this before a single tariff was applied. Now, Liberals would like to instrumentalize the tariff threat to distract from the record of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals over the last 9 years. They say that we should just forget about all the damage they've done to our country because of the tariffs that might be coming down the road. In fact, the opposite is true. Think of it, my friends. If Carney-Trudeau policies did this much economic harm before tariffs, imagine the devastation they would cause after tariffs. We need a prime minister who will put Canada first, our workers, our businesses, our economy, our borders, our military. We must, well, I need you too. Are you with me? Thank you. I thought so. And we must be able to stand on our own 2 feet, no longer helplessly dependent on the Americans.